So then the parsha we read how Yitzchok goes out. Vayetzei Yitzchok Losuach basode. Losuach means to talk, and Rashi explains davening mincha. It's expression of tefillah. That's pshuta shemikra, and that's where Rivka is coming to Yisrael with Eliezer, and she first encounters him. The Vayetzei to explain this pasuk, these words, Vayetzei Yitzchok Losuach basode, explained it up Chassidus. The explanation is as follows: Dina yesh Mishnah u'Braisa. So the Mishnah, of course, is the primary work of Torah Shebal Peh, compiled by Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, and Braisa means literally outside. These are teachings of the same Tanoim, which were not included in the Mishnah. They have more detail, and the Gemara always brings them to bear on any discussion in the Mishnah. But they're not part of the actual Mishnah proper. They remain outside the Mishnah, and they're called Braisas. Well, as he goes on to say, Braisa Pirusha Mishnah. The Braisa explains in more detail the Mishnah. Mishnah Klal, the Mishnah is the general principle. The Braisa the details. So the principle is that the klal doesn't have anything more, the general principle, than is expressed in the details. There's nothing more in the general principle that's not spelled out in the details. Which means, as he's going to explain, that there's not a maila, there's no virtue of the klal over the details. The details just spell out that which is there in the general principle, in the formula. So that means, therefore, the question is that the Braisa is a lower level than the Mishnah, which is why it's not incorporated in the Mishnah. It's descended further down. So the divine revelation of the Eibishter's Chochmah is less in the Braisa than is in the Mishnah. That's how we would assume externally. Avol, now comes the big chiddush. Externally lower. Just to understand the idea that the klal means it's a more nebula, transcendent revelation. And Prat has already articulated specifics and details. So obviously, from that perspective, the details are lower. But the emphasis, the price is higher. Why? Because the safe masse b'machshava tchila. So we're going to say Friday night, the final act is in the uppermost thought. You'll now elaborate. And that means as follows. Just in general, the example given in Chassidus is when a person wants to have a house. So the very first thought is the final image. Machshava tchila, the finished home. Then he embarks on a huge process of thinking and planning, etc. So the chiddush is that the final act expresses the very first thought. The final act is rooted in the first thought, which means the final act is much higher than all of the thoughts in between, which are lofty and elaborate and planning, etc., and academic and theoretical, the drawings of the architect, etc. The final act is the physical act that finishes the home, the final touch on the home. That expresses the very first machshava. The very first machshava wasn't the planning. It was the end product. He wants a home. So the final act expresses the first thought much more than any of the processes in between. They're a means for an end. The final act isn't the means. That's what the first thought was. Clear? So you're saying the same thing is about the Braisa, that even though the Braisa comes at the end, because it's only through the Braisa we know what to do practically in detail, that expresses Hashem's Ratzon Elyon, supernal will, higher than the Mishnah. Even though externally the Mishnah is a higher level and the Braisa is a lower level. Just like all the thoughts and the planning express much more sophistication than the final act that completed the home. But the paradox is, or the irony is, that no, The final act is what completes the very initial desire or thought that began the whole project. So the Braisa reveals the Ratzon Elyon, the Chachma of the Eibishter, more so than the Mishnah. Continuing Perek Beis. We're learning now the nature of Torah and how Torah works. So Torah has descended down to our world. Afilu b'dvar sheker. Torah deals with falsehoods. Kegoyin, the Mishnah, Elam Mitzias, with two people arguing over a found article. Zayim ani mitzasir, one says I found it. The other one says I found it. Obviously, someone's lying. So, but that's what Torah deals with. Torah has to deal with a dark, lying world. So it would seem, therefore, that the Torah is Lamaila and Gan Eden and so on, where it's all purely ethereal and Kedusha and holiness. That's virtuous. That's much higher, obviously. But Torah, by necessity, had to descend down here to be a guide in our world. So it's a Yerida. He says no. It's dafka the halachas down here, where the Torah deals with the lies and a dark world. That really touches the essence of a Torah is because Kesef Master. Because when God conceived of Torah, what does He want? It's all part of His desire of to give it to a Jew down here, that he should act upon it and transform the world, as He will say. So when Torah, that level of Torah, which is the lowest level, this is akin to the Braisa, the practical dimension, relative to the Mishnah. Cannot paskin is it going to say from a Mishnah. So it's dafkin, this level of Torah, that the deepest level of Torah, the deepest Chochmah is Hashem's desire is expressed. A commercial, for example, by illustration, Hashviferes, a pipe, a container, a narrow container. It's narrow. What goes in first comes out afterwards. So it's deeper in, comes out last. It's a marshal. This is actually quoting from the story of Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov is born last, but conceived first. That's why he comes out later. So this is a marshal. What comes out at the end is really indicative that the source is higher. Another example, like the person. This is the broad existential example. The human being. On the one hand, Shusayf called Ibrahim, he's the last of all of God's creations. And yet, obviously, he's above all of God's creations. And moreover, everything was made for man. The whole world, man was one, exists for this one person. Everybody's that one person. The Haida is to show always created for him, for the whole purpose of creation. So it's really a play on the pasuk here. He's quoting the sources being the Medrash, that Hashem says the whole world was created for man, for this person. So he comes last, but really he's the whole tachlis, uppermost in Hashem's desire and thought and motive. Next, Perek Gimel. So, my Merazal, and this is the explanation about meaning of the explanation of our sages in Pirkei Avos. Yes, he brings in the footnotes, the famous Gemara, why man was made out of Shabbos. It's like a person, a king, who makes a great Suda, and only when it's all finished, that's when he invites his friend to attend. So his friend only appears at the end, because all of this was for him. Likewise, creation. So this is the meaning of Yafa Sha'achas. Greater is one moment of tshuva and maisin tovim in this world than all the life of the world to come. What's the pshat? How can we say such a thing? It's better a moment of tshuva and good deeds in this world than the whole Olam Haba? Yes, because consistent with the whole explanation. Olam Haba, tzaddikim, how is it described? Tzaddikim Yoshvim, the righteous sit and they benefit from the Ziv HaShechina, the divine rays of the divine presence. Says the Alter Rebbe, the divine rays. This is on external level of Hashem's manifestation. The fact that they can grasp and enjoy it means it's limited. Meaning, the fact that they're benefiting, they're understanding, that in the end of the day is only the external dimension of Hashem's revelation. Because Hashem told Moishe Rabbeinu, I want to see your face. He said, you can't. You cannot experience, understand, or see my face. What will you see? You'll see the hinder part of me, the back part. Any pleasure that we have which comes from intellectual understanding at the loftiest levels of the Olam Haba is all b'chinas acharayim. It's all the external level. It's finite. But my inner face, you cannot grasp. Hashem went on to say to Moishe, no man can see me and live. If you would experience me, you couldn't live. You would become dissolved out of existence. You wouldn't maintain your sense of self. So too, Gan Eden and the Torah in Gan Eden. Gan Eden is only a glimmer reflection of the Shechina. Where is God himself found? Which level of where in Torah is his true essence invested and accessible? After here, that's why the quote from the Mishnah. It's better one moment. Here's the whole paradox. It's a simple act. The emphasis is not pleasure, and the emphasis is not understanding. It's the act, because that's God's desire. The Eibishter wants the dirb tachtonim, and therefore is found in the tachton. And the tachton means in the action, not in the revelations and the experiences. Dafke mikol chayil maba. So it's greater than the whole world to come, because Seif Masa, the final act, this world, that's expressive of God's innermost motive and desire. Now, Perek Dalet, we're skipping this bracketif, not Tzemach Tzedek, Mr. We're doing the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe. Yeah? Everybody's with me? We're following the text? Perek Dalet Vazel, Gami in Mishnah Braisa. Now we'll understand the Maila of Braisa, and this is all to explain Vayetzei Yitzchok Losuach Basod. Comes at the end of the Maimer. So in light of the above, we'll understand the Sham Mishnah Aklal. If you look at any halachas in the Mishnah, we get the general principle. Now, friends, a very subtle point coming here. The principles laid out by the Mishnah are understood. I'm giving you a heads up where it's going the next few lines. But the details spelled out in the Braisa are not so understood. He gives an example. Shah Mishnah Klal. The Mishnah gives us all mitzvahs, all the commandments in a general way. It's a higher way, meaning to say there's understanding there. For example, Dalet Tzitzis Ma'akvos. To fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis, you have to have all four. You can't have three. Because the garment, it's understood. Definition of a garment is has four corners, so all four corners have to have. The chein sukkah she gavoy, a sukkah that's higher than 20 amas is not kosher. Why? Because you're not aware of it. And the Torah says, Laman, when you sit in the sukkah, you have to be aware. Laman yedu. The generation should know that you dwelled in sukkahs when you left Mitzrayim. If it's higher than 20 amas high, it's not in the radar. You don't see it, so there's no awareness. And it goes on to say, all of these things, the reason is accessible. Why you have to have tchelis? Because the color tchelis is similar to the sea. The ocean is similar to the sky. And that reminds us of the Kis Yaakov, the heavenly throne. It's interesting. He started off with Dalet Tzitzis when he talks about tchelis. At any rate. B'gabi sukkah yesh tam, and sukkah, as I just told you, there's a reason very accessible and very obvious and very straightforward. The pasuk says, "Laman yedu dereseichem." Generations should know. Ad chaf amem, any height, 20 eyes, a person notices and sees, is aware of, as he sits in such an abode, it's higher than 20 amas, he doesn't see it. But the Braisa comes along and says, that's the klal. Now get down to the specifics of how you actually do the mitzvah. Here the explanations are not so clear. For example, the Braisa has explained the mission of all of its nuance and detail. Sukkah, ganvach, v'rakbash. This is Rosh Tevis. So the Braisa says that a sukkah there is gimel, nun, beis, chof. What does it stand for? A sukkah, gimel stands for goyim. A sukkah made by goyim, they made it as a summer hat. The nun stands for noshim, made by women. We're not obligated to sit in the sukkah. Sukkah's behema, that's the base. Sukkah made as a shelter for livestock. And the chof, kutim, these are a tribe that lived in Eretz Yisrael and they were not Jewish, they would make their sukkahs. So says the Gemara, the Braisa rather, that they're kosher. Now the question is, the chiddush here is, but they're made by people that are not obligated to do the sukkah. So that's obvious the reason. Likewise, the Rakbash, what's Rakbash? Reish Kuf, Beishin, Reish is Royim. These are all Jews. This category, it's why in the category onto its own, made by shepherds. They do that to sit out in the sukkah to watch the flock. Kuf, Kaitzim. They're watching the figs laid out in the field to dry. They watch it so they shouldn't be taken by birds, etc. And the base is Burgin. These are people who watch the city on the outside of the city, they sit in little booths. And then you have the Shin, Shoimri Peiris, they're watching fruit on the tree or laid out to dry. Here is a Kiddush here. Okay, these are all Jewish. Okay, we understand the sukkah should be good, but they're made in the first place that they're not staying in one place. They keep on moving it from one position to the other. Moves around the parameters of the wall of the city, and where the figs are laid out. I might think, since it has to be like a house, it's not placed down permanently, I would think that it's not a kosher sukkah, so the Baraksha says it is. Now, Rebbe's point is that the laws laid out in the Mishnah make sense, clearly. The laws laid out in the Braisa, look inside the text, she'ein tam l'davar. That's the halacha. Have to see the Gemara there, what's halacha l'meisha misinai or not, but I know the conclusion of the Gemara is that the main thing has to be made for shade. That's the main thing. It's made for shade, and it's kosher, made by goyim, even though it moves around. But again, it's not obvious. It doesn't fit in so clearly with the whole idea of the sukkah, and that's what the Braisa says. She'ein tam l'davar. The Alter Rebbe says it doesn't have a reason. And nida b'chush, and we can see shulamaydim ha'seichel v'atam. The halachas that the Braisa spells out are higher than reason and logic, whereas everything stated in the Mishnah has a clear source and is logical. What's his point? It's like action, devoid of time, but that's the tachton. That is the tachlis. That touches the mashabat chila. So this is the meaning of ein b'chal l'masha b'frat. There's nothing in the principle. There's not spelled out in the details. She'ein b'mishnah b'chlal yoisem aprat. The Braisa, there's nothing more in the mission that's spelled out of the Braisa. On the contrary, the Braisa has more. That's how he catches here. Ein b'chlal ela masha b'rat. There's nothing in the klal that isn't said in the prat, but the prat says more than the klal. Because umashal in isgala taima, the details which are not necessarily rational, that's the way it is. But Yosef Gavoya is loftier. B'chlal, the more specifics you get down to the details of mitzvahs, the less understood they are. It's just it's this detail and not another. B'chlal, same principle. The details actually, which are the way which we actually implement, are rooted deeper than the general idea of the mitzvah, the klal. Because Tami Amitzvahs Lein Izgalo, the reasons were not revealed to the actual details of performance. Allah said, only when the Mashiach will come. Why? Because in essence, they're beyond understanding. That's why we can't understand them now. But then there will be a higher level, that which we cannot see now. Then we'll be able to see that. So this is the meaning that the Gemara says in Kedushin, Rabbi Shimon Dorish time with the Kroy. Simple meaning is Rabbi Shimon used to explain the cantillation, the trop of the psukim, the meaning by the different notes, musical notes. The Alter Rebbe uses the word tam as in reason, and he says, what does it mean? Rabbi Shimon explained the reasons of the psukim. Shedorash, what he revealed. Shemash and pasuk tam shel dova, whatever reason the pasuk says, that's not the main thing, because that's intellectual, it's understood. But the real motive or reason is higher than mailim. That's what Athebet teaches. Rabbi Shimon Dorish time in the Kro. He expounded, or he put the reasons of the psukim into context and saying that's not the ultimate. There's beyond understanding reasons, beyond understanding. There are reasons beyond understanding which will only be accessible when Mashiach will come. Conclusion. Nimtza. Conclusion is mitzvahs. Everything clear so far, friends? Yeah, we're good. It's a very foundational moment. Beautiful stuff coming. In Nimtza, mitzvah she'ein masi batam. The mitzvahs we don't understand the reason. That's much more essential. If you have reason, that's external. That's extraneous. That's the external level. This is a mime of the Alter Rebbe when Chassidus Chabad is first making its appearance in Olam Hazeh. So he says, not the way the world thinks. The world he means the Torah world. The main thing is the heart, shemasik tainug, that he grasps the light, and he serves God with excitement and passion. It's not that. That's not true. That's not the deepest connection is your excitement and your tainug and your heart being moved. The simple act, that's machshava tchila. So what do you have to feel? The heart assists. God from the wings, like the morsel of a bird. The body of the bird is the maisa. The wings are the kavana. The right wing is ava. The left wing is yira. So your mitzvah soar, but wings without a bird are meaningless. But a bird without wings is a viable creature, even kosher. It's the ikar, obviously. So the main thing Alter Rebbe is basically saying it's kabbalas oil, the maisa. And the Braisa is more kabbalas oil more than the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah, whatever stated there is readily understood. And the Braisa is, the words of Alter Rebbe, higher than Tam. Now we're going to get to Vayetzei, Yitzchok, and Yitzchok went, Losuach basod. Beautiful title come at the end of the Maimer. Parak Hey. In a Mishnah Nikra Ir. Mishnah is called the city. City, sophisticated, developed, all contained in one unit. And again, because the mission has a reason, and like a city is a structured, integrated place. The whole Mishnah is structured in a very orderly way. But Braisa Nikra Soda, metaphorically, the Braisa would not be left outside the Mishnah is the field. Lashon bar, the word bar means outside. Chutzli, outside the city, metaphorically. Now, l'chayre, what's more important, the city of the field? The main thing is the city. Shadarim Babariol, that's where people live. Mention live there. But now, consider. Who gives them life? Hasada, the field. Shechutzli, outside the city. That's where the grain and the food and the produce comes. So that's the Maila Dafka of the Sada. Kachwa, Braisa, Machaya, Mishnah. The Braisa enlivens the Mishnah because from the Mishnah you don't know what to do. It spells out the halacha further, the frat in detail. Heyach, last is how to do. Mind you, that was for that generation. Then comes the Gemara Bavli, Yerushalmi, Bavli. The process continues, spelling it out, great articulation of detail. I'm going to take a quote here for the Gemara in Saita. Hatanoim Mavali Oilim. Tanoim, these are also authors of the Mishnah, turn the world Mavali into waste, cause the world to turn into a wasteland. So what is it? It's a very strange statement. The Gemara explains there. They destroy the world, they build the world. And the meaning of the statement is, if someone paskins only from the Mishnah, you destroy the world. If you're only relying on the Tanaim in the Mishnah, if you rule just from the Mishnah, without seeing the Brice's elaborate detail, you destroy the world. Because the Kavanah is the Moishe B'Poel, and the emphasis here is the explanations are lost the further down you go. It becomes the nitty-gritty details of performance, but that's the Kavanah. That is Machshavat Tchila. Ois Vav, final chapter. I don't have a Torah, some of these big chunks of Tzemach Tzedek, yeah? No? It's just like this? Okay. So this is beautiful, friends. Vayetzei Yitzchok Losuach basod. So Yitzchok went to converse. That's a simple meaning. I told you Rashi says goes in Tfilas Mincha. And now we have another touch. Chilish of the Alter Rebbe. Who Loshen Dibu v'Sicha. Obviously it means to talk. Sicha. V'Loshen Shchia, to bend. To bend. Lamata. Meloshen. The Eibishter is V'Shach. Roim Anoshim. Maybe it brings down the exalted arrogance of people. Another pasuk, that's a pasuk in Yeshaya. Another pasuk in Yeshaya. V'chein kashe yifrois hasechech lischais. It's talking there about someone swimming. So he spreads his hands out to swim, to go from one place to the other. The context there is that Hashem also, context there is that the swimmer he expands himself and God will humble him. But the point he wants to bring here is not that. Just this quote itself. It's moving from one place to the other. Again, the word secher, to move one to the other. Where are we moving? Not horizontal, but he's saying down. To bend down. So what's the point? So Yitzchok is learning Torah, a level which comes down to the world. He's dealing dafka with the darkness. That's what Moishe B'Poel, a world of darkness, a world even of shkorim, and therefore it has to be dealt with on the action level. That's his avodah. Lifnais erev, towards the evening. Mincha, right? That's the simple meaning of it. Not so simple, but here the Alter Rebbe teaches the word lifnois can also be lefanois. Lefanois means to empty out. What's he doing? He's emptying the darkness. He's going down to this level and he's illuminating it with Torah to the level of the dark, again, lying world. Torah came down to deal with this dark world. Like it says in Eicha, the pasuk says, "Machashakim meishivani," you place me in darkness. Says the Gemara, Zeh Talmud Bavli. It's referring to Talmud Bavli. Basically, compared to Talmud Yerushalmi, no conclusion is obvious. It's dark questions, answers, etc. Dealing even with lies, and the whole nature it doesn't. The whole nature it does. Of Talmud Bavli is contradictions and questions, etc. The Yerushalmi doesn't have, because Yerushalmi is oil. Yerushalmi is like Yerushalmi is like the Mishnah compared to Braisa. In Gemara, it's a higher level. But no, the Kavan is not Yerushalmi. Allah is like Bavli. Because you got to get down into the Cheshach to illuminate it. What's the purpose? As the Pasuk said, Lifnois erev, towards evening, Lefanis ha'erev ha'cheshach, to remove, to empty out this place, the evening, the darkness, and make vayihi oir. As it says in the Zechariah, move lasid lovoi, leis erev yeh oir. Towards evening it shall be light, referring to the end of Golus, and then it's transformed into the greatest light. Commercial Mishurayt Stefan, it says Dova, the word to The meaning to empty out, like someone who wants to empty out something. If you have a room, it's full. You want to make room for it. You've got to get inside the room. So you've got to get involved, get your hands dirty, and get inside the lefanois to empty it. But that which he empties doesn't remain there. So Torah doesn't become sullied by this. It illuminates, descends to that place, but doesn't become that place. The Torah descends and deals with darkness and lies, arguments which are obviously a lie, because one of them is lying in the case of who does it belong to, who found it. It's all to transform the darkness, the words of the Zohar, to transform the darkness into light. So descending to darkness is not to remain in the darkness, but to illuminate and transform it to light. Finally, so also the involvement in Torah study, which is all about to remove the darkness of the questions, which conceal, to grasping the law and its truth. The limtze emes and to find the truth, to reveal the Ratzon. He's referring here to that Rabbi explains in Tanya. There's two things here. There's the actions that we do in this dark world that transform it. In Torah itself, getting down to all the questions, we are also removing concealment and revealing the true din of Torah, dafka where, through contradictions and questions and so on. This reveals the true emes lamitoy. The true, deepest, final halacha is only arrived at through questions and contradictions. Which is why, again, the halacha is like Bavli. Whenever there's a dispute between Bavli and Rishalmi on the same subject, the halacha is like Bavli. Bavli is oyer, so that's like Gan Eden. But that's not the deepest chachma of the Eibishter. It's dafke in the cheshech. That machshava tchila is dafke in to be discovered in concealment, in the questions and answers, and the struggle. That's Bavli. That's Magala Gili Rotzen Elyon Baruch. That reveals the true Rotzen Elyon is dafke down here. We don't paskin like heaven. Famous story in the Gemara. You paskin the way we understand it here. That's the depth. That touches the depth of the Eibishter's deepest wisdom and deepest desire. Zehu, but now there's one caveat. How do we achieve this? Vayetzei Yitzchok Losuach. You've got to be a Yitzchok. What's Yitzchok? In order to empty out, to remove the darkness and the lightness and to fix it, which means transform it. Yitzchok, it's through Yitzchok. What's Yitzchok? You can't approach Torah learning with I understand and a whole agenda of understanding, or worse than that, showing off his insights and discovery. No, it's got to be bittul. That's Yitzchok. Kamaimer. It says in Pirkei Avos, Imein Yirin Chok. There's no fear of God, awe of God. There's no true wisdom. And that's also what it says in the Gemara Yevamah. So if a person says, I only want Torah, but not action, not deeds, you would think, okay, Torah is God. No, because the whole point of the Torah is the true depth of Torah is the Braisa, is the Halacha, is the Shulchan Aruch, is the Ma'aseh B'Poel. If you do not bring it down to action, you don't have Torah. And it remains in spiritual darkness. Avol, the emes ksiv. But what is the truth? Yoshes choshech sisrei, his secrets dwell in darkness. It's when you get down there to that level and you engage it. Even though externally we're dealing with questions and simple actions in this physical world. We're talking about Torah, the lowest level, and the actions. That's where his secret lies. That's where the inner self of God resides and is accessible. That Yitzchok Bittel went, Losuach gets down and limit Torah, bending. Losuach means to bend, to get down to the lowest level, to lifnei erev, to dispel the evening, and the nevuah from Zachariah, v'leis erev, and therefore towards the evening, The end will be transformed to light. V'hainu, and this is Libun Hilchasa. Libun Hilchasa, the Zohar explains. The Yid in the Mitzrayim, so the pasuk describes their certitude as b'chaymer u'l'leveinim, with chaymer, with mortar and with bricks. So chaymer kal v'chaymer. This is spiritually is the toil in learning kal v'chaymer, discovering truths by comparison, etc. Leveinim bricks, libun hilchasana, whitening, coming to the pure conclusion of what the final halach is. Purifying libun, getting to removing all extraneous components and arriving at the pure. What's the rotz and the elyon? What's the final ruling? What do we do? That's libun hilchasa, but that's a process. That means, by definition, removing the dross impurities, like extracting the iron from the ore. You have to remove it's a process of smelting, of removing the impurities. Also implied, I said this elsewhere, libun hilchas, and libun is white. White is bittul. Simple. Only again, this hinting, only through bittul, which is Yitzchok, can we learn Torah the way we should and reveal the deepest will and desire of Hashem manifested in the practical action. This is also the meaning that the Gemara says. In Bab Metzia, why was the Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash, destroyed? And so the Gemara quotes the pasuk because the Navi says, Yirmiyahu says, Hashem says they forsook my Torah. So the Gemara says they studied Torah. They're big scholars. The Gemara says they didn't make a bracha before they learned. The Alter Rebbe says, of course they made a bracha. What's the meaning? But the word baruch means baruch, and need, to come down. They remained Torah at an ethereal, spiritual level. They were missing the baruch, bringing down Torah into this world, engaging the world. The emphasis on halacha as opposed to pilpul and understanding, that was their emphasis. And the world was destroyed because the world was forsaken. You didn't attend it, so it'll just destroy itself. It ended up in Golus. So that's the meaning. They were missing the bracha in Torah because that's the whole kavanah, to bring it all down. Maisa b'poel, as expressed in the Brisa, as expressed in the final ruling that comes through the toil in Torah, where ideas and truths are obscure and have to be discovered. Talmud Bavli, and that's the meaning of Vayetzei Yitzchok, Losuach basada. Yitzchok is bittul. Losuach, he descends himself the level of Torah to get down to the final action. Basada, the outside, not the city. That's the world of the Brisa, the Shulchan Aruch. It's not the world of the sophisticated discussions and Tainug and Seichel. That's the emphasis. Lifnei Erev, and that's what transforms the darkness and turns it to light. That's the final finish of the pasuk.